What should EU leaders do to respond to the Trump administration's hostility? The Trump administration has been notably hostile against the European Union, despite its short time it has had to exist. European leaders have to consider the pros and cons of sticking with America or going their own way. A couple of the points of hostility here. Possible trade war between the United States and the European Union. Trump is an isolationist and is concerned with the trade deficit. Trump told the BBC that tariffs on EU goods imported to the US could happen, quote, pretty soon. They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing, and we take everything from them. Millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. And China has recently said that it could take corresponding countermeasures against the United States if if the United States decides to put tariffs on the European Union. So, since Trump is an isolationist, he prefers the United States to go its own separate way with trade, to have interstate trade rather than international trade um, within the country. And the trade deficit, in that statement, he is specifically calling out the trade deficit. He's saying that we send almost nothing to them, but we buy all of their goods, and buying all of their goods just increases the trade deficit. He is concerned that that increase of trade deficit is unsustainable. But for the European perspective, that means that they will no longer have a customer for their goods and services, and it would take a massive hit to their economy. The second point of contention is the Ukrainian-Russian war. Trump officials have been talking about dialing back the U.S. support in Kiev and the troop numbers in Europe. And Trump has been is not a fan of NATO. He has been complaining to other nations about not paying their fair share and had pushed for a 2% defense payment for each nation in NATO. And after they have reached that, he has now more recently moved the bar up to 5%. If the United States cannot be relied on for Europe's protection, the European Union is going to have to look for another source of defense, because we have been the primary guarantee of defense for decades now, and that has scared the Europeans a lot here. So some possible responses that the European Union could take: they could increase trade within EU countries and temporarily with China. So increased trade within the EU, which there's already very few trade barriers, will make them better off, will benefit the coalition's economies and more production capacity. So what that means is their economies, they'll be able to produce products for themselves, and their production capacity, they'll be able to make more things at any given time. And if a country has a higher production capacity, then they'll be able to make more products come wartime or come pandemic time. They'll be able to produce more for their citizens if they have more production capacity. If the EU trades within itself, it won't have to worry about any trade barriers, and they will all become self-reliant and self-sufficient, which will benefit them, make them less needing of foreign interference. They could also temporarily increase trade with China, but that would definitely take some of the production capacity that they have for the United States now, and so it wouldn't be a massive collapse. But that can't be trusted in the long run, because China is a very authoritarian regime, and Europe is a very democratic regime. And they will likely not get along very well. They haven't gotten along very well for years. It's kind of a similar situation between the United States and China over there. And so while that can be a temporary solution, I'm sure that Europeans would not support that long term. Second, they could increase support to Ukraine directly. European leaders and other Western allies descended to Kiev to demonstrate their support and pledge more money and assistance to Ukraine recently. So this has already partially happened. This will also strengthen the European Union, as it would give Russia fewer routes through its own territory to invade the European Union with. So it is a strategic interest of both the European Union, Ukraine, and many other Western allies to ensure that Ukraine is still stable and functioning. And then third, It'll strengthen ties within the European Union. So, if the European Union created a combined European army, which is a far-flung concept, it would bring the nations together and have a more strengthened central government, which would again reduce barriers within the country and bring the continent together. And with that whole continent being together, they would be a massive force and possibly a global superpower. But as it stands right now, the EU government itself does not have the ability to raise taxes. It does not have the ability to raise an army. And those may be things that it needs to consider in the future because, in its more divided state, it is not able to respond without foreign government influence in many cases. And it can't enforce international law the way it wants to unless it becomes stronger. So, while the complete cutting of relations with the United States would be an extreme move, simply strengthening the EU's central government and economy would be the best response to weather any fronts against foreign governments across the globe, and would benefit the coalition nations across the continent. Thank you.